Yes,
Chairman, I was the one who introduced this amendment. Therefore, I would object to the issue of this amendment. The reason for this is that these subject matters are complicated already, and we don't want to make them even more complicated by introducing what would be considered extraneous to the topic, like mathematics, geography, history. It's almost like watching a movie, and then all of a sudden there is this commercial which is not related to the movie. It is very, it could be intrusive at times. So I would beg that this was one of the amendments that I'm so proud of introducing.
Madam Chair. Yes, noted. Honorable Ladering.
Mr. Chair, I was privileged enough to review the, I think it was ADB funded. This was the crafting of the curriculum supposedly for reproductive health and sexuality education during the previous administration. This was undertaken by the UP sociologists, doctors in UP, and the experts on child psychology. What I found out and what I really appreciated is the fact that they were addressing problems on child abuse, especially among families with OFWs, through the subject of math. Not to mention the fact that it was through math equations where they are able to instill among the children their right to protect themselves from relatives who will start staying in their houses, or from relatives or from guardians who will be taking care of them, but eventually they will end up being abused children. And when I asked DepEd, the DepEd secretary at the time, it was the DepEd secretary before Secretary Lapus, she introduced me to many experts, and I realized that indeed, for our children to really be empowered with knowledge, they have to have constant exposure of their rights, especially of their reproductive health rights, in many of the, not all, but many of the subjects that they're exposed to. Curtailing this, Your Honor, might mean, it might resort to us curtailing the ability of the experts, especially on those who will be crafting the curriculum on reproductive health education, because I believe the experts would know the best time, the appropriate time, and the number of times that our children can be taught about this. That's my reservation, Your Honor, and I do agree with the Senate version, because originally the House version did not have this limiting amendment on non-inclusion in many of the subjects mentioned. So I do respect the opinion of the Honorable Golez, but I would look at it in a broader perspective, that we leave it to the experts in the Department of Education and to the psychologists that they will hire with regards to the crafting of this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Honorable Laman.
I am confirming that this amendment on mathematics, literature, history, and geography, wherein reproductive health and sexuality education that we created was earnestly proposed by Congressman Golez. And the sponsoring committee accepted the amendment. But with the explanation of the Honorable Chair and the Honorable Karim, I think the House panel should not be intransigent in having this amendment included in the reconciled version. But we would like to suggest that the House panel would have to resolve this particular issue. So hold this in abeyance.
I just would like to put on record that the Senate version that does not include it does not then mean that in all subjects it will be included, or the fear that His Honor has that ipipilit, no? Because education experts, as witnessed by Rep. Garin, know how to insert this in a way that the subconsciousness of a child can absorb this. Again, if you relate this to the other provision of the bill, this will all be age appropriate. So I leave it up to the House to decide what their position is, but the Senate's firm position, I have a very strong position on this. I am not, I think that we need to give the educational experts that latitude. And again, I reiterate that by not saying anything about it does not mean that we will find it in all subject matter. But for the record, it is already incorporated in many subjects. And to include this would really mean revising what is already the practice, which I feel would be a step backwards instead of a step forward. But we can leave it at that, and I leave it up to the House because I have no one to discuss this with, and the body will support my position, which is the existing
Before we leave the topic and hold it in abeyance, I just would like to make a statement that right now, the question of sexuality education is already very controversial. And it is meeting with some resistance. Why add to the controversy by invading subjects like mathematics? I'm a math major, and I don't remember any other topic being inserted into mathematics. And I'd like to think the kind of math education I got was adequate. History, for example, I cannot see how sex education would invade a lecture on Jose Rizal or Aguinaldo or European history. Geography, we're talking of, let's say, the South China Sea. Why would sex education be part of discussing the South China Sea or what is happening in the Caucasus or in the Gaza Strip, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman? So I'd like to reiterate my strong objection. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just for the record, I do respect the opinion of the Honorable Golez, but allow me to say that we are crafting a law that will guide our country for the several years that will come. And subjects do evolve. The math that I had before is not the math that my daughter is having now. The geography before is not the geography that we have now. And if we talk about history, then HIV is actually a part of the current history, where in fact before it was never mentioned. Geography is important in terms of sexually transmitted diseases, epidemics, infections that are entirely related to exposure for children. And I do respect that on the context that it's not the children, that the reproductive health will be inserted in all subjects, but it's the fact that we don't want to put major constraints. And I would still opt that we leave it to the experts, the child psychologists, the doctors, and the deaf ed family, who will know the proper way of introducing this to our children, so that they will not be mere information that will be given on a 1-day, 2-day, or a 3-month process, but this will be information, knowledge that will be instilled, so that our children will have the power and the information to protect themselves. With that, Mr. Chair, anyway, it will be discussed again tomorrow while we hold in abeyance this particular section. And I am hoping that over a period of less than 24 hours, I do look forward to waking up tomorrow morning and receiving a text from the Honorable Golez that he would submit to deleting a major constraint in this provision.
Well, I regret that even at this stage, I can already predict that even 1 year from now, this representation will not change. If the topic flows with the subject matter, there's no problem. For example, if you're discussing HIV history, and it flows with history, where it evolved, like it started in Africa, then there's no problem with that. But if it is invasive to the subject matter, then I have a very strong objection, because it dilutes, to me, it dilutes the principal subject matter.
Mr. Chair,
Well,
excuse
anyway,
me.
but it can be resolved later.
Yes, Honorable Laban.
Yes, I would like to, it has been suggested that the House panel discuss this, and I think the way it's leading, Congressman Golez has a certain openness in terms of modifying this particular section. So let us just defer and let us move on, please.
I'm amenable to that. May I just leave something for the House to consider by way of amendment. If His Honor would consider, at the end, you may be open to including a phrase whenever relevant and consistent with the lesson. Something like that. So, yung concern po ni Congressman Golez na hindi yung ligaw na ligaw, no? Because when relevant or consistent. Consistent being, it may not be like HIV history, of course, it's very consistent, it's very relevant to that history, but it may be different, but consistent with the lesson being taught. In other words, instead of using apples and oranges, baka ang gamitin na example is children, something like that. So, for your consideration, because that is your decision to make, because the Senate already has a position. So, let us, as moved by Rep. Abad, move on to the next item, which is very simple because we have the same provision, reproductive tract infection.